Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show I talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Season 1, Episode 4 of The Last of Us. Great episode, a lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, we're picking up, obviously, Ellie and Joel are on the road. And I think that's such an interesting thing of, like, her kind of fiddling with the gun. Because, obviously, it's a video game, so they never really fiddle around with the fact is that she kind of, like, how she gets acquainted with a gun. It's just, I guess for video game purposes, you kind of have to move it along. She's good at using the gun. Boom. Right? So obviously, like, seeing her fiddling around with it, like, I think that does speak volumes that she was, like, enough to know not only just to take the clip out, but also to check and see if there was something in the chamber. So I think that speaks volumes of, like, oh, you aren't just some, like, novice around a gun. She says later on, like, they teach you in Fedra, so I wonder, is that just, like, a part of the curriculum of just, like, at Fedra schools, they teach you how to defend yourself? To be fair, you need to know how to defend yourself when it's just, like, I mean, the living in this world you're living in now with, in the apocalypse, you kind of have to be prepared, so. I love later on when, like, Joel's siphoning out the, she's like, oh my god, how does that work? He's like, well, the gravity and pressure, she's like, you don't know. He's like, shut up, I know it works, that's all that matters. And then comes the pun book. I was like, oh my god, yes. I was like, I forgot about the puns. I forgot where she got the book from. Was it Bill's? I know, I can't remember. Maybe she did. I remember her, like, reading a whole bunch of puns to Joel at one point in time. Wasn't that, do correct me if I'm wrong, wasn't that during the section before you meet Bill, or was it after the fact? I don't remember. But, like the moment she starts saying, I was like, she did, like, in the game, she said a whole bunch of puns to Joel, didn't she? And so I thought that was interesting. And then, obviously, we, get a little extra when they're, like, on the road again. And they ended up, oh god, I'm trying to remember the order of the scenes. Either way, I was wondering, like, last episode, I was like, oh, I guess we're not going to get the magazine scene. And we totally got the magazine scene. I'm like, yeah. She's like, whoa. He's like, how do you move around with all that? Joel's like, hey. She's like, no, come on. I'm going to see what all the fuss is about. Why are the pages sticky? I'm just messing with you. Bye-bye, dude. I was like, yeah, I love it so much. Even at one point when they're driving, he's like, oh, go ahead, get some sleep. She's like, I'm not even sleepy. Hard cut. She's asleep. I was like, just like the game. I love it. Oh, it's so good. Cause there's just certain things from the game. I'm glad that they just, like, keep, like, those, like, that whole sequence was, like, exactly like it was in the game. Like, even to the point of her throwing the magazine out of the, because didn't she say she took it from Bill's place? I don't think it was already in the car like it is in this. I think she took it from Bill's place in the game, but I could be mistaken. But I did like them kind of stopping for a little bit, and it's like, okay, eating Chef Boyardee, 20-year-old Chef Boyardee, and it's like, oh, he was good. It's like, I was like, okay, you're just attributing it to a person, not like this, brand. I was like, which also got me thinking. I was like, man, I haven't had Chef Boyardee ravioli in a hot minute. Like, I'll probably say, like, the last time I was even around it was, like, one of my nieces eating, and I was like, I have not had a can in, like, I can't remember the last time I ate some Chef Boyardee's ravioli. And the amount of times I'm saying it, you swear this was a brand deal or something. But it's just like, it's just so funny because it's like one of those things where you're like, oh yeah, I kind of like when you don't have something in your life long enough, you kind of forget it exists. I'm like, oh, this episode reminded me that, oh yeah, that's a thing. I love it. But I also love that, like, they're having this, like, she's having this serious conversation, and it's like, oh, do you know, why the scare, and she's like, can I ask you a serious question? He's like, yeah. She's like, why did the Scarecrow win an award? Because he was outstanding in his field. She's like, you dick, you already read this? He's like, no. Which, there's also, like, a sadder line to that, because you're like, well, he's older, so he's probably heard all the puns and stuff like that, or either he figured it out himself, but a deeper underlining could be taken because Sarah might have been, like, very big into puns and stuff, so there could be a little bit of a parallel there where it, like, that's why he knows that, because Sarah told him that years ago or something like that, and, and even though it was, like, 20 years ago, he'll remember because stuff like that, everything related to Sarah might stick out to him or something like that. I'm so curious, whether that's that or not, because she's like, oh, did you already read this before, you dick? It's like, no. I was like, probably, once again, it could be I like to believe it's because Sarah used to say puns like that, so he remembers that one in particular. Like, because they had that type of relationship where I could definitely see her being kind of a jokey like that. I should also point out, I did not know this just because I know the information. The actress who played Sarah, her name is Nico Parker, had no idea that's one of Tandy Newton's kids. Obviously, like, I think I best know her for his Maeve on Westworld. Had no idea. And when I found that out, I was looking at her, I was like, wow, when you look at her face, you're like, man, I definitely see, like, she looks a lot like her mom in her face. Now knowing that, I'm like, oh yeah, I totally see Tandy Newton in Nico Parker's face. Just kind of an interesting bit of information I thought I should also include. There's something else I was thinking about, but I'll kind of save that toward the end. It's kind of like on a more darker, like more depressing note, so I'll kind of save that towards the end. But either way, I just thought that was kind of an interesting thing, and obviously, like, Ellie kind of getting that nervous thing of, like, because Joel is like, it's not like we don't have to worry about infected here, but it's people, and she's like, no one's going to know where we are at. He's like, don't worry about it, it'll be fine. And I think that's so interesting because I think, Ellie's ever really known is the OZ, like, I said OZ, jeez, the quarantine zone. Saying OZ just made me, because I was thinking about, like, Oz. What was it that was making me think about? Oh yeah, the Scarecrow. So that's why I was like, OZ. It's like, yeah, tangents and on aside. But the QZ is kind of all she's ever known, so she doesn't know the outside world like Joel does. So I thought that was kind of an interesting thing where she sleeps, and Joel, just to protect her, stays up, because a lot of what he read from Frank's letter last episode really struck a chord with him, and it's like, he wants to protect her, and it's like to make her, like, right, he wants to make this as easy as possible for her, because, like, once again, you are a child in this universe, and that's a hard thing, and, like, I want to try and protect that as much as possible to make up for the fact that I wasn't able to protect my own daughter. So, and then we get the whole, like, her trying to read the map, and along the way learn a little bit more about Tommy. Once again, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think the whole Tommy being a part of being in the military, I don't think that ever came up in the original game, but maybe it did. But we learned a little bit more about, like, Tommy was in Desert Storm. He's apparently always wanted to be the hero. And I think that's such an interesting parallel with, like, Tommy's a more optimist, where Joel is kind of the pessimist, because and maybe that's just, that was worn down for so long, and I think just because, probably, like, as Joel puts it, it's like, right, my brother always wanted to be the hero. Thing is, joining the army didn't make him the hero. After Desert Storm, he didn't feel much like a hero. 12 years later, we met up with a group from heading up to Boston. That's where they met Tess. And they did what they had to survive. Eventually, he got mixed up with Marlene and the Fireflies because he wanted to be a hero. He wanted to save the world, which even, later on, he's like, yeah, that was kind of stupid of him. Like, delusional people believing this world can be saved. Once again, showing you the pessimist that Joel is, which even Ellie's like, right, you got to try something, right? He's like, yeah, because you haven't seen the world. I've seen that ugliness. And he's more of a realist in his mind. It's like, I see things as they are, and I accept things as they are. There is no changing this world, no changing who we are. He looks at the worst of humanity, but obviously that element of Joel is changing, but it's like 20 years in this world, seeing the worst of humanity, on some occasions being the worst of humanity, will kind of make you view things like that a little differently. So I just thought that was kind of interesting. Obviously, we got the Raiders situation. I was curious, like, I figured they probably would keep that the same. So, obviously, they didn't get, like, rammed by a bus. But, yeah, I love that whole, also, like, Joel and Ellie never found it, but I thought it was kind of a nice touch that they included the burned bodies. Because if I remember, that's a thing that they did in this town, was, like, they, like, kill people and they burn the bodies. If I remember correctly, didn't Joel and Ellie find, like, a room full of, like, a building, and there was, like, a room full of, like, shoes that they took off the dead people and stuff like that? I might be misremembering that. But yeah, Joel having Ellie hide is like, right, I'm gonna handle this. He ends up killing the two people, and then when the time comes, Ellie comes in, and she was about to pull out her knife, but instead she used a gun, which I think in the game she did attack with her knife. Mainly, because obviously it wasn't until after this section in the game she eventually got a gun. Yeah, because like Joel was getting drowned by a dude in like some water, and then she shot the guy, and then Joel took the gun from him, which we'll kind of bring up those comparisons later, if I'm remembering correctly. But Ellie, like the whole thing wasn't what she thought it was, because I think legitimately Ellie wants to feel powerful, to feel in control. Because when she was shooting a gun earlier, when she was like, pew, 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 she was like feeling hyped and everything. And the moment it happened, and then she's just standing back, and the guy's like, please, my name's Brian. Like, I'll talk to my mom. We're all good. We're good. And, it's like, yeah, Joel's not going to let that guy live. And, he takes a gun from Ellie. He's like, go. And Ellie the guy was like, no, please. And then Joel doesn't just like shoot him, like, cause it's probably like let's not waste the ammo. Just stabs the guy. And later on, he's like, are you okay? She said, yeah, I'm good. She's trying to put up a strong front because she doesn't want to appear weak. Because she's like, no, I'm tough. I can handle myself. She wants to prove herself to Joel. Like I said, I think she's trying to prove herself to not only to Joel, but also to herself. Like, no, I can handle this. I'm tough. I'm strong. I'll make it through this. I think that's why, I think she feels like she has a lot to prove to Joel, but also to herself. So she's trying to pretend like she's okay, which later on Joel's like, it's okay that you're not okay. He's like, you shouldn't have to have done what you had to do. And he blames himself. And it's like, right, I'm the one, it's my job to protect you. And he even said that harsh thing early on where it's like, right, you do what you have to do for family. And she's like, well, what if you can't find the Tommy? He's like, I will. You'll go above and beyond for family. He's like, yeah, but I'm not family. He's like, no, you're not. You're cargo. But I made a promise to Tess, and Tess was family. So, and still kind of like that backhanded thing of like, no, you're not family to me, you're cargo. So he has these moments where like he lets his guard down, but there are other moments where he is a dick to her, And I think that's so, that balancing and juggling act. Because even at this point in time, Joel was still, even in the game, still very dickish to Ellie. Like, it wasn't as, like, in this, I feel like a lot less antagonistic in the show, because it is more apparent about, like, how he is very, episode 2, he was straight up a dick to her, but since then, he has kind of evened out a little bit more, which he was still very dickish even at this point in the game, in my opinion. But it's like, but it's still a thing of like, hey, are you okay? Worried about her, making sure she's okay. And, he's like, you shouldn't have had to do that. Like, it was me. I didn't even hear that guy coming. So, like, and that, like I said, I think that's such an interesting change, because in the game, he chastises her for doing that. But then later on, he says, like, right, you did what you had to do, because it was either that guy or it was me. So, thank you for doing it. It took him a while to eventually say thank you. But in this time, he's not chastising her. He's just kind of like, I didn't hear it. But he just feels bad. It's like, you should have never been put in that position. I should have never put you in a position where you had to be the one to save me. And it's like, right, it's not like you killed the guy. I think that's extra reason why Joel did what he did. Well, for one, can't take the chance the guy's going to survive, and, even if you returned him to his people, that's not going to go the way you want it to. So he ends up killing the guy, but I think it's also because, hey, there's a chance he might die from these wounds. I'd rather be the one that kills him rather than it being on Ellie, so. But Ellie even saying this line where she's like, it's not the first time I've hurt someone. And then it gets brought up later on, but she's like, I don't want to talk about it. Which I'm like, I'm assuming, and it's just me, I'm assuming that's in reference to, without spoiling it, just the storyline of what the DLC of Left Behind was about. I can assume it's that. Because, like, I'm curious how they handle that, too, because if I remember correctly, Left Behind, like, fades out at the end. Like, you never get, like, a full conclusion to that. So, the aftermath of it, but you don't know, like, you don't see. So that's why I'm curious, like, well, they showcase that in the show, because I know they are going to cover that storyline. Once again, without really getting into it to avoid spoilers for anyone that doesn't know the story, but I can only assume when she's like, oh, I've done it before, I've hurt someone before, it has to be in relation to the Left Behind storyline. So we'll see. I love the whole thing of them also, like Joel, showing her, like, use the gun. He's like, right, Fedra taught you this, let me teach you this. And then, like, he's kind of yanking him, she's almost like having fun to some extent. And she's just kind of excited because I think she was trying to look for Joel's approval, and for him to kind of be like teaching her like this, I think it makes her happy, be like, yeah, but also kind of think it makes her feel better. It makes her feel like I can be strong. He sees me as strong, and so I can be strong. I'm gonna be okay. So I think there's a little bit of that going on. But I even love when they're like climbing the stairs to the building. I also like she's like opens the door for him. It's like, where would you be without me? He's like, Wyoming right now. She's like, oh yeah, I walked right into that one, didn't I? Once again, just a little thing too, like just kind of a carryover from the games. I do like the whole aspect of, hey, let's send you through so you can like open stuff for me to some extent. I really like that. I don't know. I like the like just kind of like taking stuff from the game and applying it like that. Just obviously like him lifting Ellie up and stuff like that. Once again, like episode 2 when he does it for Tess so she could crawl through the rubble. I'm like, I don't know, just immediately me think of like, oh yeah, the triangle prompt and everything, you know. With the quick time events. Well, not even a quick time event. It's just kind of like, oh, press triangle to start the whole sequence of, yeah. Either way, climbing up the stairs, made it to like floor, was it 33? And she's like, oh, come on, get your lazy ass up. He's like, lazy ass. I'm 56, you little shit. And I did think it was so sweet, like the whole, like them laying down and everything. Once again, him trying to make sure she's okay. Obviously dumping out the glass. She's like, what's that for? He's like, oh. And even her being like, right, you can't, are you, she's like, are you going to be able to hear the glass? And I was like, was that supposed to be a crack about him being older? And it's like, it is. But she's also like, yeah, I've kind of noticed you don't hear as well out your right ear. I was like, oh, that's such an interesting little detail. Because if you do notice, like when he's laying down both times, you see him laying down, he's always laying on his right. He's laying on his right side. So his right ear is muffled by the pillow. So his left ear is up so it can hear. I never noticed that. And I guess like that's almost like maybe if you go back to some of the episodes, like she has to repeat it, like stuff has to be repeated sometimes. And he's like, what? Like probably because like kind of insinuating like he doesn't have good hearing. And she's like, yeah, did you get like shot there or something? He's like, no, most likely from like all the times I've had to fire a gun. So he's like, if you want to protect your hearing, like keep using that knife. So then we get another side of things, which this is once again that element of I remember aspects like a lot of the major plot points of the game, but I don't remember probably some of the like the extra dialogue, some of the notes you find. And when we get introduced to the fact it's like, whoa, Fedra's been overtaken, I was like, did they make a point of that in the game? Like I think it's just like a hey, raiders are in this city. Maybe they made a point of that, like maybe it's some lore throughout this section of the game, but I don't remember them making a whole point about that. To me, it was just like, yo, these are raiders and stuff like that. Once again, that great conversation of straight from the game where it's like, how'd you know that guy was faking it? Because Joel is like, yeah, I've been on both sides of it, you know? Once again, we did what we had to survive. Me, the group we were part of, Tess, and even Tommy. And it's like, have you ever killed innocent people before? And Joe's just like, come on. It's like, yeah. Which the answer to that is yes. And that's kind of the nasty aspect to this whole situation. So, but anyway, circling back, we see like the moment like Brian was mentioning, he's like my mom and stuff like that. I was like, wait, is that who Melanie Linsky is playing in this? But I'm like, no, he's probably just talking about Brian was probably talking about his actual mom, but not less. Melanie Linsky's character of Kathleen is kind of their kind of pseudo mom of sorts. Either way, it's just like obviously it's like the timing's so interesting, like getting this character she's portraying. While you know, if you once again, I would not shut up about the show Yellow Jackets because this next season starts drops next month, like later next month. So I'm super pumped about that. But it's like yeah. Either way, it's just kind of like seeing like her in that light. I don't know, because like when I also think Melanie Linsky, I think of like Rose from 2.5 Men. That's kind of like one of the first things that comes to my mind. But also like her is Shauna from Yellow Jackets. Either way, putting tangents and all that aside, the moment she's talking to that doctor dude, which the doctor was like, I gave birth, like I birthed you, like I kind of helped bring you into this world, and it's like. For her, it's, oh, this is the same cell that my brother was beaten to death in. And it's like, right, you worked with Fedra, you ratted people out. He was like, kind of like, no, that wasn't me. I never told people about your brother. And she's like, looking for someone. The moment she dropped Henry's name, I was like, whoa. Henry as in like, Henry and Sam Henry? I was like, interesting. Because Henry and Sam were just like Two, spoilers, not, I mean, we see them at the end of the episode, but spoilers if you don't know, Sam and Henry, it'll get talked about next episode, but they're two brothers. That it's like, I don't mean that obviously in both senses, but it's like, yeah, they're siblings. So there was no connection to these people. I don't think it was just like, yo, we just happen to be in this area, we're just surviving. Now making it a plot relevant of like, oh, this group is specifically after Henry and them, because I guess Henry was part of the people who worked with Fedra to sell people out. I'm sure for Henry, it's like, right, I did whatever I had to do for the sake of like keeping my brother alive. Now that's also a dynamic I'm very, like this version of Joel and where he is storyline wise. Obviously, once again, there's parallels to where Joel was in the video game, but I think Pedro's Joel is in a slightly different place and coming at it from a slightly... I think that some of the key elements are still there, but I still think some storytelling-wise, I think Pedro's Joel is coming at this whole Ellie relationship from a slightly different, but also like the whole conversation is like, right, the pacing is just different because it's a TV show versus a video game where you have to kind of expedite some of that stuff maybe a little bit more in a video game than you would in a TV show where you can kind of let it breathe, that dynamic and that. But like it's just like I said, his whole approach to Ellie is very similar to like Joel in the game, but also different in that regard. You know, I'm going in, but that's going to be a dynamic I'm really going to like to see both of them. Their different perspectives on, hey, we're both people who've had to do something to protect people we care about, you know, and our purposes in this life, and once again, kind of building once again off of the Frank and the Frank and Bill of it all. But either way, but like I said, I thought that was such an interesting element to the whole, making Henry and Sam, well, specifically Henry, having a plot-related reason to storyline-wise connected to him, because it's like, once again, they were just like fellow survivors that Joel and Ellie ran into. So I thought I think that's such an interesting change. I'm really interested to kind of dive into that a little bit more, or is that all we're going to get from that? It's going to because it makes this whole situation personal. I mean, because I think that's what the Last of Us story does really well, is it does make everything personal. It is a very personal story. You have like the zombie apocalypse and everything be the backdrop, be the setting, but then you have like these very personal human stories that kind of really are the focal point of the story. And so, because Kathleen, I mean, maybe there's a character like, but like there was no focal character like Melanie. So when I saw her in the teaser trailer, I was like, wait, is she playing Tommy's wife? I was like, oh, she's playing this very specific character. So I thought that was interesting. So kind of like a personification of kind of, I think, for the world building of just kind of like, right, which I think is, I'm a little over the place. Like the fact is that they kind of shut Fedra down. It's like we've kind of taken over the city, which I think is an interesting parallel to Fireflies, who have not been able to do anything against Fedra, which even Marlene made a whole point in the first episode. Is like how we can't really call it a rebellion when we haven't really won and been fighting for 20 years and kind of getting our asses stomped, you know? So it's just kind of interesting on that front. The moment she found Brian and them, it's like, oh, Henry must have called in some other people. These people must be other fellow collaborators, which we're going to find all those collaborators and we're going to kill them. Kathleen goes in, pops the doctor because it's just kind of like, I think she was just angry after everything because like he was kind of a byproduct. Because like for her, it's like, you are just the same as Henry and them. And it's like, well, you're not going to tell me, we'll find them ourselves. Which later on she finds where Sam and Henry were hanging out. Because like the moment they found the drawings, that solidified it for me. I was like, this is the same, it is the same Henry. Like it's a very specific name. So I was like, yeah, it had to be the same Henry from like Henry and Sam. So I do think it's interesting. Like obviously like, I thought they were going to end the episode on just a happier note. I was like, because I was like, you're going to squeeze in the Sam and Henry appearance, aren't you? The actor who plays, I have to pay more attention next episode. But the actor who plays Henry, that's not the actor who played Trey in The Dark, is it? It might be the same actor. I don't know. It might not be. I was curious. I obviously he was on like they're only in it for like a couple seconds, so I didn't really get a good look. But either way, so I thought they were going to end it on just like them laughing. I was like, oh, kind of ending it on a like a ha 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 heartwarming moment. But it's like, no, I'm going to leave it on a cliffhanger with Sam and Henry getting like the drop on you, which that's how they got in. I don't remember how Sam and Henry got the drop on him. initial. I don't think it was they were sleeping. I can't remember if they went into a room or got jumped. I don't remember how Sam and Henry got the best of them at one point in time. Like, had them, like, at gunpoint like that. Either way, like I said, great episode. I'm very interested to see where all of this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. I also want to talk about something that is on a more somber note. I figured, because I didn't remember, I was going to bring it up at the beginning of the episode, but then, like, I didn't think about it until, like, the middle of the episode, especially bringing up Tess. But obviously, the sad news, like, I think it was, like, maybe Monday, like, after the last week's episode aired, maybe even Tuesday, that the news came out about Annie Wershing. I hope I'm not butchering her last name. I looked it up to confirm it. I think she actually passed away, sadly, the day of. Like, I think it was like the 29th. I was reading that's when she passed away. But sadly she passed. And I'd commented on this last week. I had no idea she was sick. Apparently she passed away from cancer. I had no idea. I'd actually Googled her fairly recently. I don't remember what was, but I don't think I try not to look too deeply into actors' personal lives and stuff like that. And maybe it's something she personally had talked about. I don't know if it's kind of like a similar Chadwick thing where it's like nobody knew, or was it like people did know? Like I just didn't know, so I commented on being blindsided by that. But that was very heartbreaking. Only 45 years old, and obviously it was relevant in this regard because to anyone that's unaware, she was the actress who played Tess in the Last of Us video game. It's something I didn't learn that about until like a couple years ago. I want to say it was during I know the argument's still like, well, we're still in the pandemic, but I want to say Troy was with Nolan North, and like they were playing Nolan was playing through The Last of Us for the first time, and they brought in actors who were from the game, and I think they kind of spoiled like I think she accidentally spoiled Tess's death to Nolan or something like that. I think was kind of like a bit, if I remember correctly. But but that was like the first time I'd found out about that. I had no idea she was Tess. I never forgot until her passing, and I was reminded because people were like, oh yeah, like Tess. I was like, right. So like the timing too and everything, and I was like, damn. Because I want to say the first thing I ever saw Annie Wershing in was probably 24. Like I can't remember her character's name. Wasn't her character's name like Walker or something like that? That might have been the first thing I remember ever seeing her in, but like obviously knew her from the show Timeless, The Vampire Diaries, where she played Damon and Stefan's mom, Carolina's mom from Marvel's Runaways. Oh, God, I feel like there was something else. Oh, yeah, Bosch. That was another thing, too. I think that's why I was looking her up, like, recently, just because, like, Bosch Legacy. I think I was looking her up in that regard. Because she was in Bosch for a little bit. So, yeah, rest in peace. That sucks. And once again, only 45 years old. And like I said, I didn't know she was sick. But, yeah, I did. That's kind of been like popping in and out of my mind, obviously, over the past week. So I figured I'd wait till this week to kind of like talk about it on this channel, because I typically don't bring up like, oh, when somebody that, like, even if it's an actor that like I follow their work and stuff, like it just, I'd rather not, unless it's in the context of something related to their work. Like probably one of the last times I did it was probably like Luke Perry, and I only talked about it during Riverdale. So it's kind of something similar in that regard. So yeah, I know I'm kind of ending this on a somber note, but I just wanted to talk about it. I wanted to include that in this as well. So I was thinking about bringing it up like at the beginning, but like I said, I didn't think about it until I was in the middle of the review. But I was like, you know what, I'll just save it till the end. So sorry to, like I said, kind of end it on kind of a somber note like that, but really that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and good